Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me today. Today I am using this fabulous stencil from the October box of the month for the Not Too Shabby shop. This is for the month of October, and the stencil is called Winter Magic, and it was designed by Call Me Crafty Al. It's a layering stencil. I'm going to be using this really cool poinsettia part of the stencil, and so I am going to start out. I'm using some Lavinia inks in paprika, and I believe the other color is coral, and I am just going to put some ink on the stencil onto a scratch piece of paper, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz that with water and kind of give a faint impression of that on my cardstock. So I have a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock cut a little bit smaller than 4¼ by 5½, and I'm going to go ahead and take that stencil and spritz that with water. And then I'm going to turn that over so that the wet side is going to be pushed up against the cardstock, and then I'll take a paper towel and just press it so that that image can transfer onto the cardstock. And the first one didn't come out too great. I don't know if I didn't have enough water on there, but I didn't re-ink it. I went ahead and I pulled the stencil up, and there's still plenty of ink left on the stencil, so I spritzed it again with a little bit more water this time, and I'm going to follow the same process. Just flip it over and press against the back of that with a paper towel, and this one comes out a little bit better, but the point is not to have it come out perfectly looking like a poinsettia. It's just to give a little bit of a kind of mixed media background, and then there's still some ink left on there, and I'm going to go ahead and place that down one more time. And I like that there's a lot of the color that's kind of filling up the background from the ink that got on the outside of the poinsettia. And so I'll go ahead and take that piece and set it aside. And then I'm going to actually create the poinsettia that's going to be the focal point of this card. And so I am using the stencil on another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm going to start with the coral color and kind of take my blending brush and go over the entire poinsettia, and then I'm going to take that darker color, which is the paprika, and try and center that kind of towards the middle, and then blend all of that color out. And I'm actually, the stencil's upside down. If you use the stencil right side up, and by that I mean right side up, you can see the kind of engraved lines on the stencil when you go to do the layering. I kind of did it a little bit backwards, and so to line this up, I just flipped it over. But if you do it with the engraved lines up, all you have to do is move that over and layer it over your colored area, or the area you just colored the poinsettia, and it lines up really nicely. And so I'm going to take some greens in the Lavinia inks and color up the leaves and the little, I don't know if they're berries or whatever whatever is in the middle of a poinsettia, and color those up. And once I have those colored up, I'm going to go ahead and take my heat tool and dry it up a bit, because I did get a lot of ink, especially in the center of that. And then I will be fussy cutting this out, and so I'm just trying to make a really thin white border around the entire image. And for an image like this, I try to go really slow and be really patient, just to get a good cut around the curves or the edges of the poinsettia. And so I'm going to finish that up. And then I'm going to take my fingers and kind of shape the paper a little bit, and so I'm just kind of trying to bend where the lines of the image are, so it looks like there's a little bit more dimension than what there actually is. And then you can either take your fingers, or if you have a tool that's kind of slightly small, like maybe a pick tool or something like that, that you can use to kind of roll the edges. It helps a little bit to kind of roll that around the side of the paper. But I'm just going to keep working it until I get it how I want it. And then I am using some of the silver thread from my stash. And when I put the thread in the background, I like to wrap it around my fingers and and then just kind of splay it out, because then it kind of takes the guesswork out of, well, how do I arrange this so that it looks messy but not? And so I find it easiest to wrap it around my fingers and then kind of let it loose, and it will kind of splay out a little bit, and then you can work it around on your cardstock or wherever you're placing it to give a good arrangement. And I've added a little bit of foam on the back of that poinsettia, and I'm just going to place that over the thread, so it's going to hold the thread in place a little bit. And then I've got a few little extra pieces off the edge there, and I'll snip those off. And then if there's any pieces of thread that are kind of wild, I like to take a glue dot and kind of push those where I want those, and that glue dot will keep them secure wherever they're being placed, I guess you could say. And then I'm going to add a little splatter, and so I have used the coral color and placed a little bit of ink on my mat and watered that down. I'm just going to take my paintbrush and add a bunch of splatter, and then I added a little bit more splatter. So I added some white metallic watercolor to go with that silver thread. And then some of the finishing touches on the card are the sentiment is gold or silver embossed, and it's the Believe sentiment from the stamp set that is in the box. And I'll go ahead and add a little bit of foam behind that and adhere that to the card. And then I'm going to mat the card panel onto this kind of glittery paper from the Winter Magic 6x6 paper pad that is also included in the box. And then I'm going to add a little bling with the confetti mix from This Calls for Confetti that, well, again, was included in the box. So you can make this card, you know, with the exception of whatever inks and maybe some thread you have in your stash. This entire card can be created with just the contents of the box. So I think that is fabulous. But that is it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it or find it informative, I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up. As always, I thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I hope to see you next time.